It's a Friday morning. Ohio, 1946. A woman opens the top drawer of her hallway table, the one right next to the door, and takes out a pair of white cotton gloves. She pulls them on slowly, one finger at a time. Then she opens a small pink compact, the kind that snaps shut with a satisfying little click, and dusts her face with Coty powder. She clips on her pearl earrings. She smooths the front of her navy blue shirtwaist dress, the one with the white buttons, and leans down to kiss her daughter on the forehead. They are going to Kroger. Not to a wedding. Not to church. Not to a dinner party. To buy groceries. And she is dressed like it matters. Because to her, it did. There was a time not so long ago when getting dressed wasn't a decision. It was simply what you did before you left the house. Every time. For anywhere. Most people today have no idea this ever existed. This quiet, unspoken agreement that how you showed up in public said something about who you were. Not your wealth, not your status, just your regard for the world around you. Somewhere between then and now, we stopped. And in today's video, we're going to look at exactly what we walked out the door wearing and what we left behind when we stopped. Before we talk about what women wore out in public, we have to start with what they wore at home, because the distinction mattered enormously. The house dress was exactly what it sounds like, a simple cotton dress, usually in a small floral print or gingham check, worn only within the walls of your own home. You cooked in it, you cleaned in it, you wore it to hang laundry on the line. It was comfortable, practical, and completely acceptable. Inside. The moment you stepped out that door, the house dress stayed behind. You changed. Every time. Without being asked. Today, the line between home clothes and out clothes has almost entirely disappeared. And perhaps that's more comfortable. But something was lost in that disappearance. The sense that the outside world deserved a different version of you than the one that burned the toast. A woman didn't just wear a hat to keep the sun off her face. The hat was punctuation. It said, I am put together. I am going somewhere. I am ready. In the 1950s, you could tell a great deal about a woman's errand from the hat she chose. A simple felt cloche for the pharmacy, a structured straw hat with a ribbon for a Saturday at the market, something with a small silk flower for church or a luncheon. Picture a woman named Ruth, standing at the mirror by the front door on a Tuesday morning in 1958. Her drugstore errand hat, a simple navy felt cloche, tilted just so, adjusted twice before she was satisfied. Not performing, just finishing. She did this every time she left the house, the same 2 adjustments, the same small nod to herself in the glass. Hat makers in small American towns did remarkable business through the early 1960s. And then, almost overnight it seemed, the hat disappeared from everyday life. Some say it was President Kennedy's bare head at his inauguration in 1961 that started the cultural shift. A small moment, a very large ripple. White, cotton, clean. Women wore gloves to go shopping the way we wear shoes now, without thinking about it. They came in white, ivory, and pale gray. They were washed, ironed flat, and kept in a drawer near the door, so you'd never leave without them. And here's what surprises people most when they learn about this. Nobody told women to wear them. There was no rule, no sign on the store window. It was simply understood. The gloves were part of the language of respect for the people you'd encounter, for the spaces you'd enter, for yourself. My neighbor Dorothy, the story goes, once came to the store without hers. Her youngest had been sick that morning, and she'd simply forgotten. She apologized when she saw a friend in the produce aisle. She apologized for her bare hands. Can you imagine?
It wasn't about vanity. Let's be clear about that. For women of the 1950s and 1960s, a swipe of lipstick before walking out the door was the equivalent of a firm handshake. It said, "I'm here. I'm present. I took a moment for myself before I gave my time to the world." The shades were specific and faithful. Revlon's Fire and Ice launched in 1952 and became a quiet phenomenon, not because it was glamorous, but because it was available. For $2.15, a woman could feel finished, prepared, ready. And this one surprised me when I first thought about it. Most women wore essentially the same shade for years, decades even. The lipstick wasn't a statement, it was a signature. Bare legs were, simply put, not done. Not for errands, not in town, not in public. Women wore stockings, first silk, then nylon after the war. And the ritual of putting them on was its own small ceremony. You sat at the edge of the bed. You rolled the stocking carefully so it wouldn't snag. You attached it to the garter belt. You checked the seam in the back. The seam in the back. A crooked seam was something a friend would quietly lean over and whisper about, and you'd excuse yourself to fix it. Because it mattered. Because the details mattered. Not in an anxious way, in a cared-for way. There is a difference. Pantyhose arrived in the mid-1960s and changed everything. And by the time the 1970s ended, bare legs had become ordinary. Progress, perhaps, but also the end of the seam. A moment before we continue. We're halfway through this list, and I want to ask you something. Has a specific person come to mind yet? A face, a sound, a particular smell? Maybe a coat, maybe a pair of shoes? Maybe just the way someone moved through a room when she was dressed and ready to go somewhere? Hold on to that, because the next few items are smaller details, easier to overlook, and they carry, I think, the deepest answer to our question. Not just what women wore, but what the wearing meant. A woman's handbag was not a catch-all tote. It was not a rolling suitcase. It was small, structured, and it matched. The handbag matched the shoes. Not approximately, exactly. Or as close to exactly as the family budget allowed. White shoes, white bag, from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Dark leather in autumn, patent leather for anything formal. The structured handbag of the 1950s and 1960s, a Lady Dior shape, a simple leather clasp bag, was carried in the crook of the arm, never slung carelessly over a shoulder. It sat on your lap at the lunch counter. It sat beside you on the church pew. Think of a grandmother at the Woolworth's lunch counter. Her white patent leather bag sitting upright beside her coffee cup, not on the floor, never on the floor. Opened with one clean click to retrieve the exact change, snapped shut again before the waitress had turned away. Nothing loose, nothing spilling, everything its own place.
It was not a convenience item. It was a finishing touch. And perhaps that's what we've lost most of all. Not the object itself, but the idea that an outfit could be finished, complete, said.
It wasn't just the women. Children in the 1950s and 1960s were dressed to go out in public the way they might be dressed for a school portrait. Little girls in smocked dresses, boys in short pants and button-down shirts, their hair combed and pressed flat with a damp comb. Saddle shoes, white and brown, kept clean with shoe polish applied the night before. Saturday errands meant Saturday clothes. Not the best clothes, those were for church, but one step above every day, because that was what going out meant, one step above every day. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was simply the rhythm of the week, and children absorbed it without being taught it. They learned by watching their mothers open that hallway drawer. This is the one that stays with me. It's 1963, or maybe 64. A young mother has a newborn at home. She hasn't slept more than 3 hours. Her back aches. Her eyes are dry and heavy. She needs one thing from the A&P, a can of Campbell's soup. Tomato, probably. She puts on her camel-colored wool skirt, her good flats. She does her hair. She drives to the store, finds the soup aisle, and stands there, holding the can, feeling like she might simply fall asleep on her feet. And then an older woman touches her arm, gently, and says, "You look lovely, dear." 3 words. The young mother stands up a little straighter. Something in her steadies. She drives home, heats the soup, and carries on. She's thought about that older woman 100 times since. The woman didn't know she was running on nothing. All she saw was that she tried. And that was enough. That is what getting dressed meant. It was not performance. It was a promise you made to yourself, on the hard days especially, that you were still here, still showing up. We dressed because it reminded us that even the ordinary Tuesday was worth the effort. Here is a detail most people have never thought about. Women who cooked all day, who stood at a stove for 6 or 7 hours, would remove their apron before answering the door. Every time. A neighbor dropping by unannounced would wait the 10 seconds it took for the apron to come off. It was reflexive, automatic. The apron was for work. The person at the door deserved the woman beneath the work. It seems like such a small thing, but it wasn't small at all. It was a constant, practiced reminder that your labor was yours, private, and your face to the world was something you chose, something you offered. We live now in an age that celebrates showing the work, the behind the scenes, the unfiltered. And there is beauty in that too. But there was also beauty in the apron coming off. Every child of that era understood, without being told explicitly, that there were categories, and the categories mattered. Play clothes, worn, comfortable, the ones with the grass stains your mother had given up on removing. These were for the yard, the creek, the back lot. School clothes, presentable, not your best, but respectable. Cleaned on Sunday, laid out the night before. Church clothes, the best you had, pressed, polished, reserved. And between those 3 categories lived an entire philosophy of life, that different contexts deserved different versions of your effort, that not everything was the same, that some things were more important than others, and your clothes were how you acknowledged that, quietly, without words. Picture a boy, maybe 8 years old, a Wednesday afternoon in 1961, who changes the moment he gets home from school. Not because anyone is standing there telling him to, because he knows.
School clothes go on the chair. Play clothes go on. The distinction is already inside him, placed there not by a rule, but by years of watching it happen around him. The blurring of those categories, which happened gradually through the 1980s and 1990s, wasn't just a fashion change. It was a philosophical one.
There were no rules. No sign on the door of the Kroger. No dress code posted at the pharmacy. No one checking your outfit at the entrance of the A&P. There was nothing official, nothing enforced, nothing written. It was simply understood. Understood the way you understand not to shout in a library or to hold a door for the person behind you. It existed in the shared air of the culture, absorbed through mothers and grandmothers and neighbors, and the quiet, constant example of the women around you. And this surprises people today more than anything else about that era. Not the gloves, not the hats, not the seams. The fact that it was all voluntary. Because what that means is they chose it. Every day. Quietly. Without being asked. What does it mean that we stopped choosing it? In the end, it always comes back to a Friday morning. A specific drawer in a specific hallway table. White cotton gloves, folded neatly, waiting. A pink Coty compact. A navy blue dress with white buttons. Pearl earrings, clipped on with 2 small, certain clicks. A mother leaning down to kiss her child's forehead before they walked out the door together. Going to Kroger. Going somewhere that mattered. That ritual, repeated in millions of homes across America every week for decades, was not about fashion. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about the simple, radical act of deciding that the ordinary day was worth something. That the grocery store was worth something. That the people inside it were worth something. And that you, getting dressed on a tired Friday morning, were worth something too. That is what we stopped doing. Not the gloves, not the lipstick. We stopped deciding that the ordinary was worth the effort. And I think, quietly, we've been missing it ever since. I don't think anyone needs to go back to white gloves and garter belts. That's not the point. But there is something in this, something worth sitting with for a moment, about what it means to show up. Not perfectly, not formally, just intentionally, with some small acknowledgement that the world outside your door is real, and the people in it are worth a moment of your thought. Maybe it's a woman you'll never know, touching your arm in a soup aisle, saying 3 words that hold you together on a day you can barely stand. Maybe it's just the sound of heels on a linoleum floor, your grandmother's heels, and the way that sound meant she was ready. She was going somewhere. She was still here. If this video made you think of someone, a mother, a grandmother, a neighbor who always seemed to have herself together in ways you couldn't quite name, I hope you'll carry that thought somewhere kind. Because I think that's what they were trying to tell us all along, that life deserved a little ceremony. And that the ordinary Tuesday, if you're lucky enough to have one, is everything. If a memory came up for you while you were watching, a detail, a smell, a person, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Sometimes the smallest things are the most true. And if something in this conversation felt familiar, if it reminded you of a kitchen, a hallway, a woman you loved, there's more where this came from, just over here.